Absolute silence, when intentionally deployed as a weapon during a conflict, is never a display of emotional maturity. It is the ultimate manifestation of psychological cowardice. Modern internet culture has completely warped our understanding of healthy boundaries. You see countless posts telling you to cut people off, to protect your peace, and to embrace the lone wolf mentality. But when you are in the middle of a disagreement and you suddenly shut down, refuse to speak, and pretend the other person simply does not exist, you are not practicing Stoicism. You are not protecting your peace. You are executing a highly toxic, deeply abusive power play designed to punish another human being. The clinical reality is that your silence is not a shield, it is a biological weapon. In the following clinical breakdown, we are going to dissect the exact behavioral architecture of the silent treatment. We will expose the neurobiology of ostracization, why the human brain processes being ignored as physical violence, and how your fake stoicism is secretly revealing your absolute inability to handle accountability. While the rest of society romanticizes emotional unavailability and calls it strength, you will understand the dark evolutionary truth of intentional withdrawal. You will learn to spot the exact millisecond a fragile ego chooses manipulation over basic human connection. Let us strip away the comfortable lies you tell yourself about your communication style. Throughout human evolutionary history, our ancestors survived exclusively within the tight, cooperative structure of a tribe. To be ignored by the tribe, to be ostracized and met with absolute silence meant you were being expelled. It meant you were no longer protected, and in the ancestral environment, biological expulsion meant certain death. You could not survive the winter alone. Your modern brain, despite all of our technology and comfort, still operates entirely on this ancient, ruthless hardware. Human behavior and the silent treatment. When you intentionally ignore someone who cares about you, you are not just giving them space, you are artificially simulating their biological death. Neurological studies utilizing functional MRI scans have proven this beyond a shadow of a doubt. When a human being is subjected to the silent treatment, the anterior cingulate cortex of their brain instantly lights up. This is the exact same region of the brain that registers severe physical pain. The emotional devastation of being ignored is processed by the nervous system in the exact same way as being physically struck. You must understand the gravity of this biological reality. When you look at your partner, your friend, or your family member, and you consciously decide to look right through them without speaking a single word, you are inflicting measurable neurological trauma. You are forcing their amygdala into a state of absolute panic. Their body is flooded with cortisol. Their heart rate spikes. They are desperately trying to re-establish connection because their primitive brain is screaming that they are about to die alone in the wilderness. Behavioral psychology of emotional abuse. Think about the specific moment you decide to deploy this weapon. Think about the last time you were losing an argument. You were cornered by the facts. Your mistakes were exposed. Your ego was actively being challenged, and you did not have a logical, mature response to defend yourself. Instead of taking accountability and saying, "I am wrong, let us fix this," you completely shut down. You walked out of the room. You stopped answering text messages for 3 days. You rationalized it instantly. You told yourself that the other person was being too dramatic. You convinced yourself that they did not deserve your energy. That is your fragile ego desperately trying to survive its own collapse. The ego cannot tolerate the vulnerability of losing control. When a manipulator realizes they can no longer control the narrative of the argument, they instantly shift tactics. They realize they cannot win with words, so they decide to win by removing themselves entirely. By going completely silent, they flip the power dynamic of the entire relationship. The argument is no longer about whatever mistake they made. The argument is suddenly about their absence. Avoiding people psychology and cowardice. Pause and write this down now. The silent treatment forces the victim to abandon the original issue and beg for basic connection. This is the hidden, insidious goal of emotional withdrawal. When you go quiet, the other person's nervous system enters a state of sheer panic. They forget that they were angry at you for lying, or for crossing a boundary, or for being disrespectful. Their biological need for attachment completely overrides their logic. They start double texting. They start apologizing for things they did not even do. They start begging you just to speak to them, just to acknowledge their physical existence. And as you sit there in the dark, watching their desperate messages light up your phone, you feel a massive surge of artificial power. You feel superior. You feel in control again. You have successfully trained them to abandon their own boundaries just to keep you in their life. This is not the behavior of a strong, centered, stoic individual. This is the behavior of an emotional coward who uses silence to torture people into submission. Let us dissect the massive delusion of the introvert era and the weaponization of therapy language. Modern culture has provided emotional abusers with the perfect vocabulary to hide their toxicity. You proudly declare that you are simply setting a boundary. You claim that you are protecting your peace from toxic energy. This is a severe, manipulative distortion of clinical psychology. Why you push people away during conflict. There is a massive, unbridgeable difference between a healthy boundary and the silent treatment. A healthy boundary is communicative. A boundary sounds like this: I am feeling extremely overwhelmed right now, and I cannot continue this conversation productively. I am going to take 2 hours to regulate my nervous system, and then I will come back so we can resolve this. That is a boundary. It provides the other person with safety, clarity, and a timeline. It respects their humanity. The silent treatment provides absolutely nothing. It is a dark, endless void. It leaves the other person entirely in the dark, twisting in the wind, with zero idea of when or if you will ever return. A boundary is designed to protect the relationship from further damage. The silent treatment is designed to actively punish the other person for daring to challenge you. Stop masking your inability to communicate as intellectual superiority. This brings us to the immense, invisible damage this behavior causes over the long term. You believe that you can selectively weaponize silence and still maintain healthy, loving relationships. You are completely wrong. When you repeatedly use the silent treatment to win arguments, you fundamentally destroy the psychological safety of the entire relationship ecosystem. You are conditioning the people who love you to walk on eggshells. They quickly learn that if they bring up a genuine concern, if they express a completely valid emotional need, or if they hold you accountable for a mistake, they will be punished with days of agonizing silence. So, to survive you, they stop communicating, they swallow their pain, they hide their true feelings, they slowly begin to resent you. You build a massive psychological fortress to keep the conflict out, but you also lock all the trust, the intimacy, and the genuine love out. You end up trapped in a sterile, emotionally dead environment of your own making. You feel physically safe because nobody challenges you anymore, but you feel completely numb. Your partner is physically in the same room, but emotionally, they left you months ago. The rot spreads in the silence. Stoicism versus isolation. True emotional control. True psychological resilience, real behavioral fortitude, is not the ability to aggressively ignore someone until they submit to your will. It is not the ability to endure days of toxic silence just to prove a point. That is just endurance, and endurance driven by a fragile ego is just self-inflicted torture. Real power requires absolute exposure. True stoicism is the ability to stand in the light, look the person you are conflicting with directly in the eye, and say, I am angry, I am hurt, I completely disagree with you, but I am staying in this room, and we are going to communicate until we figure this out. It is the brutal, terrifying courage to remain emotionally present when every single primal instinct in your animal brain is screaming at you to run away and hide in the shadows. The people who actually care about you do not need you to be perfect. They do not need you to never make a mistake. They desperately need your presence. They need to know that when the storm hits, you will not abandon the ship. The ones who use silence to control you were never your tribe to begin with. To break out of this toxic biological trap, you must perform an action that feels completely counterintuitive and deeply dangerous to your ego. You must open your mouth and speak. You must deliberately, consciously dismantle the firewall of your own arrogance. The next time you feel the overwhelming urge to shut down, to walk away, to punish someone with your absence, you must force yourself to stay in the pocket of the conflict. You must let the illusion of your absolute control die so that the reality of your human connection can live. Every single time you choose the silent treatment, the wall gets significantly thicker, the resentment gets heavier, and the path back to a healthy relationship gets much longer. The silence is not making you stronger. It is preserving your immaturity in amber. It is keeping your emotional intelligence completely stunted. The moment you step out of the silence and allow yourself to be emotionally present in a messy, uncomfortable, difficult conversation, the illusion of your superiority evaporates. You will breathe easier. You will realize that the loss of control you feared so deeply was almost entirely manufactured by your own ego. True control is not about dominating the other person. It is about mastering your own urge to flee. Stop calling your emotional cowardice introversion. Stop calling your abusive withdrawal protecting your peace. Stop using psychological buzzwords to justify a toxic biological lockdown. You are a human being, and your nervous system strictly requires honest, difficult connection to regulate itself and grow. The greatest power move you can ever make in your entire life is refusing to hide behind silence when the world expects you to shut down. Reclaim your physical space, expose the psychological wound, communicate through the discomfort. Take the heavy armor off. If this clinical breakdown ripped through your daily excuses and accurately described your toxic communication patterns, subscribe to the channel. You are not meant to navigate this psychological matrix blind. Check the links in the description to access the specific frameworks you need to master your mind, break your manipulative habits, and rebuild your emotional resilience from the ground up. Stop hiding behind your silence. Start living in the light. See you in the next protocol.